Okay. I
All
got
right.
it.
So here's what happened when I tried to steal a cop car. I ineffectively was trying to figure out how to put the car into drive, right?
How
So
old were you?
I was 15,
So you didn't know how to drive?
at all.
No.
Like, why would I know? I'm a city kid too, it's just kind of like,
Right.
well, how do you do this? How do you operate this machinery? And I'm pushing buttons. I pulled the little nub of my index finger, fingerless panda glove from Hot Topic that I like trying to push the things. And then literally, I'm not kidding. You know how in your mind, when you have a memory that's like, I don't know, like 20 years old or something, you're trying to remember exactly how it is. In my mind, I've created this epic Scorsese, like slow montage of everything happening in a very slow way. I see the other sirens behind, and then all of a sudden, it's like one, two, three cop cars kind of close in,
Terrifying.
and I get out like trying to be sly about it. Oh, what just happened? Like, what happened? You know that feeling where you're just
Are you
like,
guys looking for someone? Can I
what?
help?
Yeah, like what's going on? Like what is happening? But man, they got out of the cars, guns drawn. It was like traumatic,
Scary. Yeah.
right? Because then I realized the severity of, oh, you guys are pointing those guns at me, like, but I'm wearing panda gloves. Like, this is not happening right now.
Did they take you
Anyway,
in?
yeah, yeah, I got arrested. I got
Of course
arrested.
you did. I don't know why I'm asking.
They took me to jail. Like they booked me. They scared the shit out of me. And I actually, I didn't think that I was leaving at all. I thought that was it. I'm like, wow, this is my life.
That's
I'll
really
never forget
scary.
the booking, the gentleman who was booking me in was basically like totally sly about it. And he's like, welcome to life in the system. And it just, I think that the reality set in of, wow, like that really landed because I am on the path to this being my life. And
Mm.
then, it was my dad came and he bailed me out, and it was, everything in my power to tell him that I was not trying to steal any, like I was like, I wasn't trying to steal anything. I wasn't trying to steal a car. I was just playing around. There was, it just, I was in a bad situation. And so I had to go to court. I had to go through the whole thing. I was on probation for like 2.5 years. So basically
Wow.
half of my high school life on probation. And it was scary because they, in LA, kids like us, like they want you in the system. They're not
Hmm.
necessarily setting you up for success. And I could say that now working with at-risk youth and just obviously growing up in a city, like this is back in the day. I don't can't speak to it now, but back in the day it just wasn't set up for people to get out of the system. I was really lucky. I had a great probation officer. He was like the jam. He definitely wanted to see me succeed, and I had people in my life that were really showing up for me that didn't make me feel like I was a loser, because even some of my own family members were, I was the bad kid. I'd show up at like family gatherings, and here I am, like first gen Mexican American, these people that came to this country and everybody's like hard worker, and I come in as like first gen. I'm hanging out with all the other bad kids, and I'm basically just, giving you guys a bad name. So that was really tough. But that's where I found yoga and meditation, and slowly my life started to change, and it took some time, but I started to see the result of, yeah, this is what happens when you actually choose different. Because some people, I think that the nuanced thing for people that grow up like I did, that you think, well, why don't you just make a different choice, or why don't you just do something else? Like, why can't you just not be a bad kid, but it's really hard when we are a tribal society, right? When you decide to go against kids that you grew up with, what that means. What does that actually mean? I was just having this conversation with my mom the other day because I'm kind of going through. So I don't know if you know this, if I told you this, but I have a book coming out in February.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, everybody, I am not just talking into the void. We have somebody here right now.
I'm here.
This is what happens. Jessica Lanyadoo is here. And did I say your last name? I always feel like
it's Lanyadoo.
Lanyadoo.
I think the etymology is from Lanyador.
Oh,
if that helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's Lanyadoo.
Lanyadoo. It's not phonetic. It's not English. So I'm never offended when people say it wrong. But if you're asking,
like leña.
It's like my father's from Iraq. We're Iraqi Jews, but we're like we were in Spain during the Inquisition kind of thing.
Okay,
you know what I mean? So the name comes from it's we're Ladino from back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that helps. I don't know if that
helps. It
does.
Yeah, because I want to be able to get this right.
I mean, I actually was thinking about this last night, and we're coming back to your story.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I was thinking about this last night and how important it is to say people's names correctly and how much I don't care if people say my name incorrectly. And there's like a real, I think, a very important cultural conversation about getting people's names right.
Yes.
But as a person with a very difficult to pronounce name who, before the internet fully took off, named my website and my brand after my last name like a genius, I I really am not particularly invested in people saying my name properly. And I say everyone's names wrong. Like I forget my dear friends' names. I have a weird thing with names. So I'm really, really chill when people mispronounce my name, and they almost exclusively do, even though I say my name on my podcast all the time. And so it just never really bugs me. But I know people really want to get it right. But I don't do it for you. Don't do it for me, because I'm cool. I'm cool with whatever. If you want to say it wrong, my favorite incorrect pronunciation is rhyming it with Xanadu, because I love that movie. So Xanadu is kind of funny to me, but none of it's that serious to me.
You know, it's interesting. I'm the same way. Like I don't people are always like Acosta, like something, how much does something Acosta? And it's actually Acosta. And it's such a like little thing. I never correct people. People do it, just people say it all the time. But if you ask me, I'm gonna tell you. But that doesn't mean that you have to say it. You know, like I don't, it matters more to you. It's important, right? It's this conversation, obviously, like, but we're also, you know, two people that have this background, right? That we're like, oh, okay, you know, but I think it's important for us to be able to have a conversation around. I've had people on the podcast before. We talk about it. So it's definitely a topic that the listeners are familiar with, how to pronounce names and whatnot.
I think it's such an important topic. I really do. And I think it's a good cultural shift where we're placing so much emphasis on it. And also, I've been in situations where people get defensive on my behalf about others mispronouncing my name. And I just think that this is when we get into sticky territory as a culture, where we decide that everyone has to agree. Because listen, there's a lot of things that I really don't like. That's just not on my personal list. And I think it's really valuable to be able to like hear it when people say like, I don't care. Like it's okay to be chill about certain things. In this case, for myself, I'm chill. And it sounds like you are too.
Yeah. We're chill. Too chill.
We're chill. We're chill. And my name is Jessica Lanyadoo, so you don't have to do it again.
Boom. There she is.
She did it. Yeah.
She did it. And we're here. And this second time on the podcast. And the last time we had you on, we had such an incredible response. And I listen, you know, to your podcast, so I should know better, you know. Your podcast is so good. Like, can we just talk about how good your pod is?
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you. I love making the podcast. Like I love it so much. So I'm glad that you like it and that people like it
Yeah.
because I love
So
it.
people, I was compelled to have Jessica on the show because number one, she's an incredible human being, and she is probably one of the most insightful. Um, why do I want to call you a spiritual leader? Because I feel like you are.
Thank
She's
you.
such an inspiring, insightful female leader in the space of spirituality. And
Thank you.
yeah. And
That's
I
so
just,
nice.
yeah, and I wanted to have a conversation. I just wanted to actually chat with you. And I'm like, let's
Great.
record a podcast.
Let's do it. Let's make it into content. I'm into
But
it.
so, you know, the last time you were on, it was so funny because energetically, I think, and astrologically, we're going through this really big transition. And I'm feeling like this year, and don't worry, guys, I will go back and finish my story.
You
Don't
better.
worry.
You better.
Um,
I'm invested.
but I think we're going, just energy wise, it feels like after the last year and a half, I also want to hear how the last year and a half has been for you. But it just really seems to me that we're getting ready to go into this big transition coming up. I just feel it in my body. Like it just, I don't know what it is, but I'm excited. Dare I say excited? I'm feeling very optimistic these days. I'm feeling really grounded in my home.
Mm.
And I am curious for you, yeah, what's been going on? Like, how have you been dealing with the world at large?
Yeah. Uh, it's been a really difficult time for me. 2021 was has been harder than 2020, for a variety of reasons. And as a medium, um, the pandemic has been especially difficult, because there's so many dead people and so many of them died alone. And really, it's a rough way to go, this pandemic. So it's been a very unique, hopefully once in a lifetime, terrible experience. Um, and I don't really feel like it was easier seeing the pandemic coming. Uh, you know, uh, yeah, it didn't make it easier. Um, so, so yeah, I look at the world, and I am not an optimist, so I don't wanna murder any boners you may be experiencing, but I am not as optimistic as you are about the future.
Oh,
I'm actually
God.
deeply concerned about what comes next, which you could hear me say any given day of any given year, probably because I'm a triple Capricorn, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you laugh when you were drinking.
That's fine.
Um, so yeah, so there's the like the energies we're stepping into, and then there's like what I've been going through, and I don't know if I was too vague about what I've been going through, but it's been in 2021 there's a lot of scattered energy, as there's this like push to go back to normal, whatever the fuck normal is.
Right?
And things aren't normal because we're very much in a global pandemic, and so many people are sick and so many people are dying, and it is, for me, as a medium, as an empath, as an astrologer, um very distressing how impatient everyone is to get back to normal. I have a lot of empathy for it, I get it, but if we're in this together, how could we go back to normal is kind of my
Yeah.
feeling. So, I feel like in 2020 and really throughout the Trump administration, there was so much focus. People were like, okay, we have differences. Fuck it. Let's get together. Let's work it out. We need to learn something new. We need to mobilize. We need to make something happen. And in 2021, everyone's just like, peace out. Like I'm burnt out, and Biden's there, so it's and we have a vaccine, so and I feel like there's like a lot of psychological pressure that has been placed on humans this
Mm,
year, and the morphic field of it, if I may speak in woo,
please.
the morphic field of it is quite difficult. I think it's quite difficult, and I have, and that is not speaking to anything else, including, but notable mention is the climate crisis. Um, so, yeah, all of that said, the Pluto return of the United States is happening very soon in 2022. Um, and that's not what someone may characterize as good or
Oh,
chill.
shit. Okay.
No. And so a lot of the political unrest, the um the problems we're seeing with the gerrymandering, and the kind of like, if the Republicans continue, watch me go political, sorry, we're going, if the Republicans continue to be able to effectively gerrymander in the way they're doing, then it doesn't matter who votes. It becomes rigged. The whole um the Pluto return of the United States, if you or your listeners haven't heard of it, is essentially like the referendum on the great American experiment. This is an experiment.
Yeah.
And how is it working? I think that we have been, in the last 2 years, really dealing with a lot of consequences, and a lot of collective awareness, um, around how it isn't working, and how it is, but a lot of how it isn't working. And so I think we're going to be confronted by it. And there's a lot of ways it can go. None of them are chill, and none of them are easy. And so um, I, yeah, I worry, but I'll
Mhm.
tell you this, and then I will gracefully shut up, or not gracefully shut up. Uh, Before the pandemic hit, so in 2019, 2018, a lot of spiritual people I spoke with, a lot of astrologers, I was like, oh no, it's coming, it's going to be terrible. And a lot of people were like, it's going to be an awakening. We need things to be shaken up. This is really great. And then from a spiritual perspective, they weren't wrong, but from like a human perspective, yeah, I wouldn't call 2020 or 20, these years like an awakening in
It's
the way
not
that
like
I
the
would
age of
want.
Aquarius.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. So I think a little bit more of that is happening, and I think a lot of empathetic and spiritual people who are feeling like, oh, something really big is company coming, and it's going to be an opening, aren't wrong. But I don't know how that shakes down to human experience. I don't know
Mm.
that it's going to shake down quite in a lovely way.
Wow. That is unfortunate for
I'm
somebody
sorry you
like
asked me
me.
that straight out the gate. It's
Well, and I
terrible.
was kind of banking on the fact that you were like, I don't have next year's available right now. And I'm like, oh, man,
No,
here
I'm
we
sorry.
go.
Here we go.
How
Sorry.
can we prepare when we know things like energetically? I mean, it's such a hard
Yeah.
this whole well, I'll let me rewind the tape a little bit, address the let's get back to normal thing. What is
Yeah.
normal? What are you guys wanting to get back to? Because, life changes. Like the only thing constant in life is change and uh impermanence. Like everything is impermanent. Nothing is going to last forever. We have to be a part of our human experience. Our soul contract here is to be in this experience and to be fully immersed in this experience. So, yeah, so that's one thing. And then second is it's I saw this meme that Ryan Holiday posted a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple weeks ago. Um, and it was basically the top half was this hellfire. The city was like on fire, and it was basically like the earth. And then the bottom half was Will Ferrell, like with his hand next to his mouth, like yelling, and it said authors trying to sell books. So it was kind of a funny juxtaposition that it just reminded me of, well, we have to be able to make the world go round, right? But at the
We have to
same time,
live.
yeah, we have to live. And how do we continue to live and have a level of integrity that is in alignment as that is in alignment with what is happening out in the world, and recognizing that yes, a lot of people are suffering and there are things that are going to require our attention that we need to be involved in. You know, I know a lot of people that just want to bury their head in the sand and be like, if I just stay positive and don't focus on the negative, everything's going to go away. And it's like, how'd that work out for you in 2020?
Hmm.
Curiously.
Hmm. I mean, the only people who can get away with that are deeply disassociative or, wealthy and white. And I think the answer to the real question that you're asking is some of it is cultivating emotional intelligence so that we have the capacity to stay present when things are hard because shit gets hard. And when we only have spiritual intelligence or cognitive intelligence and not emotional intelligence, then we disassociate or we analyze things into something we know how to tolerate emotionally. So the key is emotional intelligence, and that's a practice. And I think the other thing is for spiritual and empathetic people, I know it's very normal to not consume news. And I am passionately opposed to it. I know a lot of empaths, and they're all like, I'm too sensitive for the news. And I just feel like, why do you think the universe gave you these sensitivities so you could disassociate from the world? No, sir. It's so that you could be associated. You're feeling the world. So, what are you going to do with that? And it might be that your calling is to read the news, know what's happening, and then run energy to a place. It may mean, signal boosting things. It may mean activism in a more kind of traditional sense. It can mean so many different things. In every social movement across the globe, there are always spiritual helpers and spiritual workers behind the scenes. And some of that is well documented and some of it isn't. But there's room for us all to participate based on our nature and within our resources, but it takes, again, a willingness to do it and the emotional intelligence enough to be like, I can't do it today, but to not always tap out, to tap out and then tap back in and then tap out and then tap back in. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I like this. I like this because it is encouraging. Everything that you're going to say, I'm like, okay, this is positive. This is good. This is giving me courage.
Okay,
I
good.
think it's what's been your feeling over the last year and a half with the bad press that the spiritual world or the spiritual sector has received because
Mhm.
of the political tones over the
Mm.
last.
I first will say that I'm looking at my window and there's a tiny hummingbird just sitting on the plum tree. It's adorable, and I feel like that's a great magical moment.
We have so many hummingbirds here. This is a hummingbird sanctuary.
That's so nice. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Love.
I feel like it's saying a lot of good things about us, but I think it's good. Honestly, I think it's good because, and this may piss off you or I don't think it'll piss you off, but it could piss off listeners. But I think that QAnon is incredibly dangerous. And I think that there's a great deal of con spirituality and radical far right propaganda has absolutely very intentionally been infiltrated into far left leaning spirituality. And it's incredibly destructive. And it's it's happening, and it's happening through the internet, and it's happening through a pandemic, and it's happening when people are desperate for answers and desperate for meaning and desperate for community. And there is a real con spirituality is a real thing. And I do think that the spiritual community, as if there was one, because there's many, right, um, does deserve criticism. Because we have a responsibility to be civically, politically, socially minded, to take responsibility for the power of our actions and our words and what we choose to ignore. And I think that stuff is really very important. So I'm actually glad for it. And you have to keep in mind, I started my private practice in the mid 90s. So the criticism of the wellness world in 2021 is nothing. It's nothing as much as it was for the bulk of my career. I think this is finally well founded. It's like somewhat informed criticisms as opposed to like astrology is madness, which is
Yeah.
what a lot
Yeah.
of it was before. So I think criticism constructive criticism is really important and valuable.
Yes, I
Yeah.
totally 100% agree. Everybody that listens to this podcast knows what our ethos is around radical love. So I would hope that nobody comes for you or us for having this conversation, because if that's the case, then the operation is happening from not a radically loved space. Again, that's my opinion, and I'm allowed to have one, as are you, as is
Indeed.
everybody else. But
Indeed.
you do not have the right or permission to flood our inbox. That's what you do not have.
That's nice. I like that boundary. I mean, I will say that a lot of the QAnon stuff is really netted. I mean, there's certainly people in the wellness space who are into QAnon who are just like happy to have an excuse to be, racist and
Sure.
anti-science, etc. But I think a lot of it is actually about disinformation. And
Mhm.
I have a lot of empathy for people who believe that they're consuming the truth
Yeah.
when in fact there it's just like, confirmation bias drama for
Yes.
your inbox. It's like outrage porn. Um, and I think that, the more I think this issue is really important, not just around spirituality, but around the news, etc. We need to be able to talk about how to be critical thinkers and what's the difference between disinformation and misinformation and misunderstandings. How do you determine what's real and what's not real, especially with woo? It's very hard to know,
It's very
So I
nuanced.
it is, and it's not like you learn it and it's done. You have to stay vigilant and active, and to me that's what spirituality is. But for a lot of people, they want spirituality to be like the vacation from the difficulties of life, and that's what drugs are for. That's not spirituality. Is that wrong to say?
No, that is the best definition and best explanation I've heard to
Okay.
date.
Okay,
So
great. Well, thank you. It was just
kudos to
spur
that.
of the moment, just
Yeah.
spontaneous.
No, it was good. I'm on board with you 100%. I think that our conversations, it's hard to have a full conversation to such a nuanced topic with 140 characters or a picture and then the comment section. I mean,
Yeah.
I also believe that these conversations, especially when it's conversations that you have with, say, a loved one, to have these conversations in person or hear them talk to you in real time, as opposed to I posted something, now my aunt's going to be irritated at me, or whatever. um, Whatever may happen with the information that you're trying to put out into the world. It just seems like everything is confirmation bias these days, like every single thing. I was joking with Tori, my partner, the other day, because he had said something, and we were kind of just having this conversation of a disagreement that we had. And I'm like, well, it really is subject to belief. Like, if I believe that this is yellow and not orange, that's what I believe, you know? And he was, trying to argue. He's like, yeah, but you clearly see that's orange. And I'm like, it's actually yellow. And I kind of just dug my heels in just to piss him off. But he was visually getting agitated, and he's just like, no, but like, can you just say that it's orange? And I'm like, what happens in your body if I'm not validating your truth? And I therapied him for that second, because I was like, what happens? And he goes, I feel like you're just trying to upset me. And essentially, the root was, I'm not being seen. That's what he was
Mm.
saying. He's like, I'm not being seen. I'm not being validated. And so I stopped and I said, I see you and I validate you. And, I'm not trying to upset you. I clearly see that it's orange, but I just wanted to see your reaction, because I feel like that's so much of what's happening with these disagreements. It's like we're not saying what is actually happening in my body, what is actually happening to me when you tell me, like, if I'm a QAnon person and you say, oh, you're a racist, and I'm like, I'm not a racist. Like, I just believe that Democrats eat children. Like, there's a difference. that doesn't mean I'm a racist. And truth be told, yeah, that does not connotate that you're a racist. I totally agree with that. Again, nuanced, but um, it is a very hard conversation to get into with certain people that just have no space for your truth.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Oh, I do. Oh, I do. I talked to Abby Richardson, who's a researcher and like a big TikToker, on my podcast about QAnon. We had a really great long conversation while there were protests outside of her house, anti-mask protests from QAnon followers. Um, and it was a really great conversation. She's puts out great stuff on this topic. And I think, for people who do have Q followers or people who are being indoctrinated into uh, disinformation in whatever way, I think the way to have conversations with people in your real life is to talk about how do you think about the information you're getting? Like, where do you get your information? Me personally, I have multiple news sources pulled up on my computer at all times. And when I see a story that really like sparks emotion in me, I look for it on a different news source because I want to see what the reporting is. Because whenever news evokes an emotion, we're not in our logic, we're in our emotion. That's cool. That's great. But before I make a decision about what all of it means, I want more information that's more factual. And not everybody has the energy to be like looking at 5 fucking news sources a day, but I think that being able to talk to people in your life about like, okay, well, where are you coming from? Like, why do you think this is yellow? Like, what do you think of color? Like, is color like a feeling to you? Is color like something physical? Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually investigating the source of it. Because if he had asked you those questions, maybe you would have just started laughing and moved on with your life,
Right.
or or not. But I think what happens is we get so fixated on like coming to a solution in a conversation that we actually inhibit real listening and real sharing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what
Yes.
conversations really are meant to be.
Yes.
So it's a process, and it's a process of learning as much as it is a process of unlearning.
Yes. Well, it's such a great point because for some of us, our instinct might be, oh, you're a Republican, your opinion doesn't matter. Or, oh, you're a Democrat, your opinion doesn't matter. Like, I'm shutting you down. Anything that you're going to say at this point, it's like irrelevant.
Mm.
You're shutting off the opportunity and the ability to have a conversation. And I really think that this is, the reason why everything is so political now, because that's just what Facebook has done. No, it's just what has happened. It's the world at large. And I don't know that we can go back to the days where we're not having these conversations. I just fear that we don't have the vernacular to fully express our feelings. And with what you're saying, you're absolutely right. Instead of coming at it from this place of how does this make me feel or what do you believe about this, you are inciting a deeper conversation. And I
Mhm.
think that most people aren't used to having deep conversations. And I mean, you or I, we can go deep. We can have these deep conversations. We can go esoteric. We can come back to this world, and I think that's not the general pop, you
Mhm.
know?
But it could be. I'm not an optimist. I really like I'm a card carrying pessimist, but I have a card in my wallet that says, "Please don't ask me to if I'm having a good day." No, I'm not. I refuse. But I do think it's possible, and I think it's possible because life is easier that way, and it seems harder in the immediate moment. But in reality, not focusing on the trigger point in a conversation, but instead in like, well, you seem upset. Like, can we just like talk about like, are you upset with me or are you just like frustrated with this topic? Like, just actually speaking to the thing that you're actually responding to instead of the topic, the truth under the matter, like the truth of the matter or under the surface.
Mhm.
That's where we can actually make progress with people in our lives because you choose your friends, you don't choose your family. You choose your friends, you don't choose your in-laws. There's going to be people in our lives where we just disagree with them. And some of those differences are so fundamental that they need to be addressed. And some of them just need to be addressed because fucking life. And I think we need different approaches for different situations. But having conversations about how to have hard conversations. That is really important. And if I was to tell you, no, I told you that I hadn't looked at the astrology of next year because I haven't in an in-depth way, but I'm an astrologer, so of course I have.
Right.
And this is this theme of the frustration that emerges when you're not sure of what's real and you're not feeling that someone else, whether it's a person, a government, a job, is validating your reality. This shit's going to continue into the autumn of 2022. So, that's just what it is. And we, on the negative, are going to continue to feel this like schism. And on the positive, we have more time to learn these lessons. You know,
Mhm.
this time has been carved out for learning these lessons. And, hard way, easy way, doesn't matter to the universe, just learn it. So,
Yeah.
again, pessimistic, but still
No, we
constructive.
like it. It's good. I love to have the balance because I can go either way depending on the day. One day I'm like, life is amazing. This is great. Great things are happening. Beautiful things are happening. And then I'm like, wow, really? Is this happening again? Oh, okay. We are still repeating that same lesson. How is that possible? I was watching this during 9/11. They have all these documentaries and stuff on Nat Geo, and they were, doing all these, yeah, different types of documentaries. And I started to watch this documentary on World War II, and I was like, wow, so many things. I feel like we've gone through this before. How are we still having these same issues now in our modern day? Did we not learn from before what happens when we have this hate and this division of peoples? It just feels counterintuitive, but
It
I'm
was
no
the same
expert.
astrology. The Uranus, yeah, the placements of Uranus and Neptune during World War II are reoccurring now and will continue to for several more years. So you're not the only person who's noticed the connections and the similarities, what's happening domestically and internationally, really around the world. And it's in my view, yes, we did learn, but when you say we, it's those who are greedy for power, those who are fascistic in nature. They learned a lot. They took notes, they read the
Mhm.
books, and they're going to work. And what it tests of us as a populace, across nations is, what do we value? Who do we value? Because, for instance, in World War II, just to speak of what I think is one of the lighter topics, is, men went to war and women got to work, and then men came back and women weren't supposed to work anymore. So we got a taste of freedom, we got a taste of financial autonomy, and then it was like, okay, go back home and cook and clean. And that it didn't go all the way back, right? Things
Mhm.
changed. And it's because women were valued in society in a new way because of necessity, right? And that's a very, I feel like, it's not a light topic, but compared to all the other things that
Yeah,
happened during
yeah.
World War II. Um, and I think what the Uranus in Taurus transit really challenges us to learn is about what we value and who we value. And we see this reiterated in so many ways. And unfortunately, the kind of overlap of this theme and war and the rise of fascism globally, um, tells you a lot about human nature. And I think that there's like a percentage, and I can't remember what it is, they've done studies to say like a certain percentage of the population will always agree with the fascist. There's just certain people who are inclined to be like, you're a bully, you're mean, you care for no one but yourself, I like you, that's strength. There's just
Mhm.
certain people who are
Yeah.
wired that way. And as we are spiritual people, it's important to remember that's a trauma response. And even though those people maybe are enemies in practical terms, they deserve empathy in spiritual ones. um but yeah, this shit that's going on and that is still yet to come, will challenge us to live in a way that reflects our values and not just our ideals as spiritual people, but our values in the here and now. And this is again where it comes back to, for me, politics and social justice. Being spiritual matters, and to be a truly spiritual person, it's hard to be uh, divorced from those things. And
Yeah.
not everything for all people at all moments, but broadly speaking. as stand by my statements.
Yes, I love. And it's so it's a great way to, yeah, feel empowered with what's happening. It's like, what are you going to do with, what are you doing with the information? What are you doing with the reality of the world? Are you going to just continue to pretend like it's not happening? It is. It's that saying, if you don't bend, life will bend you.
I've
So,
never heard that, but yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's that's just part of our path, right? I mean, that's what we're
yeah,
here. I mean, it doesn't matter how much we practice being spiritual. At the end of the day, we can't just go live in a cave somewhere and pretend like everything is at times not falling apart, because it is,
yeah.
you know.
I think that
um
there's like a certain kind of, oh, sorry, did
no,
I?
go, no, no, no.
There's a certain kind of manifestation girl who has the belief, and I feel like many of her live in LA, but not all. It's a thing. Um, it's a manifestation girl that feels that if I'm pulling in negative thoughts, if I'm learning about negative things, then I'm essentially consenting to it. And that I don't want negative things in my sphere. I
Yeah.
only want positive things, and I want to like be a glowing person, and therefore I can go ahead and ignore these bad things and these pain points. And it's a gross misuse of privilege. It's a gross misuse. It's a misunderstanding of spiritual concepts. If we cannot stay aligned with the positive or the constructive while we are in the reality of all sorts of terrible things, then we have more spiritual work to do. There's, Amma, the
Yes,
hugging
the
guru.
hugging saint.
She has a quote that I will paraphrase, that she essentially says that her love is like a river, and you can spit in the river and you can throw trash in the river, and the river flows just the same. And for me, this this concept is central to spirituality. It's about being an activated, present, kind person, not because exclusively of the results, but because it's the way to be, because it's the right way to be. And I think when we're only willing to do positive vibes only, that means a river only flows in certain conditions. And that's a problem, because nobody's life is completely positive all the time. It's just not the human condition. Again, very Capricorny, what I'm saying.
I'm like choking right now. That's no, it's good. I was trying to just keep the vibes up, but you just came in and Capricorned us.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's what I do.
you
I
know what?
Capricorn
That
it.
is that serves as a lesson to everybody. It's like, knowing that for me personally, that's not going to stop me from living my life and still trying to feel good and actively trying to continue to do the work that I'm doing in the world. But it's important for us to just be fully awake. And sometimes being fully awake means seeing the ugly side of situations, life that doesn't feel good, and that's okay. It's just part of life. We
Yeah.
can't feel good 100% of the time. It's just not sustainable,
Not if you care about the world, not if you are consuming any kind of news, right? It's not possible. And again, I know a lot of spiritual people don't consume news, but I would like to end that trend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, I definitely, I try my best to do this same type of thing. I usually get my news from Tori because he's like you. He's a Sagittarius, but he goes in and he's doing the five different news sources, and being anytime he hears somebody say something, he's like, oh, let me go actually look into this.
I'm like that too.
Somebody said,
See, a lot of dudes do that and not enough women do that. And I
mm,
again, this is why I'm constantly talking about this, because of course my audience is primarily women. I don't know if yours is as
yes,
well. I,
same,
I, I
yeah.
kind of assumed,
Hmm.
but um, I feel like women, we tend to be so overwhelmed with day-to-day life. That's
Yeah.
part of it. But I also think there's a lot of social permission for us to let the men handle it, not really
Mm.
worry ourselves. And this is not a conscious intention, it's a cultural heritage. You know, newspapers and journalism was not for women until just a few decades ago, right? And we have to keep in mind, you know, the very recent history of women's sovereignty essentially. So I think it's really important that women are informed and that we are loud about the world and the news, and that we, you know, I think it's great, you know, if you're relying on your boyfriend, that's wonderful. And also it's really important to not only rely on others for this stuff, because it is literally impossible to read a news article or watch a video or whatever the fuck it is, podcast, and then describe it to someone that you're friends with or partnered with and not put your own spin on it. It is not
Mm.
possible. Like, you are going to give it your emotional spin. So it's really a valuable tool to figure out how you translate things. Like, again, you know, do you read something terrible and then translate it into something worse or something better? Or do you just sit with the data? I don't know, it's just really important to know about yourself, I think. But
Yes.
obviously I got opinions, you know, girl.
Yeah, I mean, no, I love it. I think it's great. You know, I've got my two little news sources that I read in the morning, and that's as far as I go, you know, and I do like the idea of hearing other people's voice. And for me, this is where my little preferences come in. I tend to find female journalists and, you know, like kind of go that way. It's like, oh, who wrote this? Oh, he sounds like a nice gentleman. Let me go see
Yeah,
who else is writing about this female. Okay, what has she got to say, you know?
yeah.
And but that's just my preference. I try and hire
It's
a
the great
female
preference.
for everything I do, you
It's a
know?
great preference. I love following, female journalists on Twitter, as well, because, you know, I don't know, for all the obvious reasons, but I just recently mentioned this on my podcast, and I'm gonna repeat it here,
Let's
which
do
is,
it.
if people are listening and they're like, "Who has the fucking time?" I have the inclination, but not the time. I think just get a few friends who are your news buddies and just be like, okay, you're gonna read, you know, this, I'm gonna read that, you're gonna read this, or I'm gonna like be the friend who stays up on COVID news, and you're gonna be the friend who stays up on like whatever the fuck else. And you just share it. So you're kind of like crowdsourcing this
Oh,
difficult thing with your community of friends. And you can do a Slack, you can just talk on the phone with people, whatever works. But I think whatever strategies we can come up with to be informed, stay informed, to be not just empathetic on a spiritual level, but to have that empathy translate to action and civic engagement, that's what will make this Pluto return uh, ideal.
oof. She said ideal.
Best
Um,
case scenario, best case
Yeah,
scenario.
best case scenario,
Yeah,
which we so appreciate. I would love to just keep you here forever and chat with you. And let me put a little bow tie on that last story because I'm not going
please.
to forget. So, um, the conversation with my mother went like this. I was explaining to her because it would drive her crazy that I would wear black all the time, all day, all night, black nail polish, like black docs, the whole experience. And it really upset her and she just didn't understand it. She just hated it, you know? And I finally had this conversation with her when I saw her recently and I said, "Do you know why I dress like that?" And she was like, "Because you wanted to upset me." And I was like, "No, that had nothing to do with upsetting you. It had to do with we are living in an area and I'm going to school where colors can get you killed." Wearing the wrong shade of something can potentially cause an issue as I'm walking home through
Mm,
two rival gang areas. So, my solution, go goth, you
such a
know?
good solution.
Why not?
Such a good solution. Did she, was she like, oh shit?
Exactly. Yes, she definitely was. And I saw her take it in and she's like, "Oh, like I never knew." I write about it in the book. You know that
Mhm.
I'm kind of Mom, I know you're listening to this cuz you listen to my podcast. I love you. I'm little by little kind of revealing certain things so that by the time the book comes out, she's like, "Oh, okay. I know you wrote all that stuff, you know, but I'm trying to sort of put little things in there because still my parents are very old school, you know, they're very much from this idea of why are you sharing your business with the world? Like, why are you telling people you got arrested? Like, what? Because they see it as a reflection
Yeah.
on them.
I
And they're
think
both, you know, they're both very proud, you know, but and they're very, like, very much about you share your truth. Like, that is great. But I think that there's still a little bit of this, like, uh, like, did
yeah.
I do something wrong? You know?
Oh, yeah, that's intense. And also I think it's also cultural on lots of levels, including just their generation, right? It's Are you millennial?
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like millennials are really big on, like, personal sharing in public, like the boomers.
Mm,
And yeah, the generations in between, not as much. There's just, like, I think it's to do with media. I think it's to do with, like, you guys are, like, the internet generation, the first one.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's I mean, I have astrological theories about it as well, but I think there's lots of levels to it. But I just love that story because it also just highlights, like, if you guys had been able to have just an authentically inquisitive conversation at the time, how much less stress would she have had and you have had? Like, it's just it just kind of comes back to our conversation about, like, how to have a conversation
Yeah.
when you're triggered by someone.
Yeah.
It's about being authentically interested in the other person and where they're coming from. And it's the last thing we do when people are pissing us off or hurting our feelings.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so true. And it's
Yeah.
also even my favorite word of the podcast, right? Is the nuanced.
Yes.
So it was also a very deliberate decision for me because I think about it, yeah, it would have been less stress, but at the same time, would it have given her more stress to know that? Do you know
Well,
what I mean?
right. It's like pick your poison at this
Yeah.
point, right? It's like you're splitting hazards. What is it
Yeah.
that yeah,
It's like
that's
the
real.
thought of
That's real.
having her think, "Oh, oh no, like what how do I now I have to worry about
Was she
this?"
not aware of what was happening in the area at the time?
She knew, but I don't know that she had the bandwidth as a
Yeah.
single parent to worry about. I had an older sister. I had a brand new baby sister.
Oh, wow.
So I was 15 when my little sister was born. So my mom was, yeah, 15 years later a new mom working graveyard shift at a hospital. My older sister was just first year in college. It
I
was just like a
see.
lot of
Chaos.
stuff for her. And so it felt like at the time, even though I say it now and it's like, it felt like an innocuous thing to me. Like
Yeah.
you can be irritated that I'm wearing whatever I'm wearing. At least just know that I'm safer this way
Mhm.
than the other way, you know? So anyway,
That's intense. I will say, as an aside, that the whole time you were describing your adventure in the police car and pressing buttons, I'm visualizing, and I don't know if you know the show, Knight Rider?
yes.
Okay. So I'm visualizing you pressing buttons in Kit,
Oh
and
my God, I
anyone
love
who
that.
hasn't
The
seen this,
car.
just go to YouTube. It's a talking car.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable bit of cinematography, and storytelling, but
Yes.
I can't help but picture you, like, in Kit and with that music. Do you remember the, like,
Yeah.
theme
Oh
music?
yeah.
Um, so when you're making a movie version of your book, I just want you to remember that that should be the background music. I would like your police car to have some Kit vibes if possible. Um, because I was just like, you were, like, talking about buttons, and
Yeah.
it's just Kit to me.
Wow. Yeah. That's okay. Sure. Great.
Thank
I
you.
will remember that.
Thank you. Thank you. I know
I'll
I'm
humor
outing
you.
my age, but I'm happy to do it.
Oh my God, I love it.
Happy to
All right.
do
Well,
it.
thank you so much for coming on. Please come back
I
again.
just feel like, why is it ever over?
I
Like,
know.
why
You
don't
know
we
what?
just talk
You're
for
the
10 more
only,
hours?
I mean, I was going to say this, but I don't want to like insult any of the other guests, but definitely you're at the top, girl. I mean, like
Thank you.
so at the
I
top,
love getting
top
to talk to
tier.
you.
Yeah.
This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, so much, so much for having me. And also, if someone's listening and not watching, it's important that they know that you have the biggest piece of amethyst I've ever seen behind
Oh,
you. And it's
yeah.
just Amazing.
Yes, thank you.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Does
please
everyone
watch
already
the
know that?
video just for that.
It's
It's humongous.
massive.
I have
Do you
another
ever
one.
hug it?
Oh, I touch her. She gets loved. She gets saged and Palo Santo'd. She gets loved on all the time.
She's
Yeah.
beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah, she's
Doesn't look like a penis at all.
I actually kind of like that it almost so when it's turned a little bit more towards you, it looks like a middle finger emoji.
Oh, that's fun.
So that was kind
Kind
of
of
like,
six one half dozen of the other. Little,
yeah,
it's a little Saturn
definitely
vibes.
definitely looks like a penis with a little bit of the
Like a
testes
hard
under
ball,
it.
yeah, a hard ball sack.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that too much? Have we crossed the line?
Not here. No.
Okay.
Not
Well, I
with
mean,
you.
it is an amethyst. We're just looking at clouds and talking about what they're shaped like at this
I
point.
mean, that's all there is.
That's all
Where
there is.
can people go for more information to learn more about you? You guys, please, if you haven't listened to Ghost of a Podcast, it's so good. Um, she's an incredible podcaster, incredible spiritual leader, like all of the things. You
Thank
heard it
you.
here. She is somebody of note that you have to follow, and it just there's nobody in this space that is actually as real and as authentic as she is. When we're talking about people in this space, I really gravitate towards people who are the real deal, and you really are, so thank you
Thank
for that.
you. I was I don't know, like it's like a cat
You're in
move,
the
but I
kitty
just was
thing.
like, oh, that's so sweet. It's just so kind. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So yeah, you people can listen to Ghost of a Podcast wherever podcasts are heard. Also, I have a weekly horoscope if you're into astrology, which why wouldn't you be exactly? And I do lots of things. I have a book called Astrology for Real Relationships. It's about relationships and astrology, if you didn't get that from the title. I have a free app for iOS. It's called Tiny Spark. And it's basically like a magic 8 ball with sass. And if you're like an astrology student and you're like, or an astrologer, you can get my web-based app called Astrology for Days, and it's a transit tracker tool. So I basically do hella shit. Just check me out. Oh, the last thing I should say, which I don't know, some people find creepy, but I am obsessed with. On my Instagram feed, I drop videos where I am various planets and I describe the transits as the planets. And I'm not trying to say that they're amazing, but they are. They make me laugh so much. So, if you want to see an astrologer being a total nerd, you can just go there and it's free. Yeah.
We will. I was trying to not laugh into the microphone. We will put all of those links that Jessica just mentioned now in the
A lot.
description or the info button. If you're listening, go to the info button. If you're watching the video, they'll be down at the description. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the final question, and it's pertaining to the podcast. The whole idea of radically loved is that we believe we are radically loved and supported by God, universe, source, whatever higher power of your understanding. The final question to you is, how do you feel radically loved?
Great question. And the answer that just popped into my noodle was my vagus nerve, who I've named Viva Las Vegas. It's a play
Oh my God. Wow. Oh man, you
because my
guys.
vagus nerve, I mean, I'm like a carnival 24/7 in my brains. So um I just it's a good name for it, right?
That's great.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. Thank you very much. So I thought about my vagus nerve because I've tested her. I've made her work so hard for her very existence. Um, I just feel like my vagus nerve is an ally and a resource that I am just now in 2021 for the first time in my life starting to really appreciate and work with and treat with the reverence she deserves. So viva Las Vegas is my answer.
That has to be the most creative answer I've ever heard in 300 400 episodes.
400 episodes.
400.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
And
well,
also,
we're in
thank you.
we're in the late 300s, but by the time people are listening to
Right.
this, we'll
It's
be in
going to be 4.
400. Yes.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
truly amazing. Congratulations. And
Thank
also,
you.
thank you. It just came to me spontaneously. Although I have named her Viva Las Vegas, I mean, a while ago, but I've never said it out loud in public before. So you heard
Wow.
it here first.
First. Wow.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
love the exclusive.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you
got
so
it.
much. Please
Thank
come back and
you.
see us. Everybody
Uh,
that's listening to this. No, go ahead. I just cut you off.
no, no, I was gonna say I'll come back tomorrow. I
I
mean,
mean,
stupid, you can cut
literally.
me off. Yeah. Let's
We
talk
could,
tomorrow.
we could
Uh,
just do this all day.
I know, me too. Okay, well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you're the best.
No, you're the best.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with anybody who you think would get value or needs to hear some words of inspiration, or just maybe needs to be a little bit brought back down to reality.
That's
We
you're
right?
welcome. Yeah,
Just
you're
like
welcome. Yeah.
yes. Thank you all so much, and we'll be back next week.